So this is a little vignette. This is a little piece. You've been seeing this part of the rest of the program, all the big picture stuff we're doing. I thought it would be good to talk about what Brian does in his fun time. So this is a little bit of what I'm playing with, and it starts with a complaint from Marone, as sometimes happens here. So Marone and I were walking one day, and he's like, Brian, in Pelican, you're not leveraging the software investment CHTC has made. This is actually a kind of a common thing we always worry about is, we're one center. We're not that big. We can't have like the Pelican people and the Condor people over here. We have to work as one center. And Ron was needling me and said, you're not taking advantage of all the wonderful things Condor has done. Uh, Go. Why aren't you? And so it's kind of one of those. You go home at night and you get to thinking about it. You go, Merle's got a point. That also happens fairly often around here. And we do have an enormous investment, and they were pretty much in divergent camps. And on the other hand, as those of you under the age of 30 know, C++ is old and stinky, and Go is hip and cool. Even maybe better than Python, who knows? So I wanted to solve this problem, but I wasn't entirely enthusiastic about the solution being we're going to just start linking into some C++ libraries and making our nice, beautiful static binary old and stinky. So the aha moment we had is we can leverage the investment that's been made in the software at CHTC without necessarily talking about linking libraries. This was about October of last year. So one place where these things overlapped was inside Pelican. We have a plugin that goes into HTCSS, so the EP can move input and output sandboxes via, say, the OSDF, Data Federation. And it does this by talking class adds. So Condor writes something in the class add, Pelican picks up the class add, parses it, and then decides what objects it should move for its sandbox. And this parser was ugly. It was awful. It was a bunch of string manipulation and manual handing of quotes and regular expressions. It was not a pretty piece of code. And I said, okay, I want to leverage our software investment. So let's try all this newfangled agentic AI stuff. So I said, okay, what do we have? We have a really nice software write-up. We have a pretty good paper I was showing on the previous slide of what class adds are, what they're meant to do, how they work, a little bit what they look like. We have a pretty good write-up describing what this particular software language is supposed to do. We have a grammar. We actually have the original dusty old grammar that generated a bunch of C++ code. And shoot, we have the literal C++ code. So the concept was, can I say, dear ChatGPT, or actually at the time it was Copilot or Claude was the LLM with, can you take these three pieces of knowledge and turn them into a class add library and go? And go. So we took this as an idea and off we went. And sure enough, maybe this is a little less surprising now that everybody else has been doing this for the last 6 months. It was able to take the description. It was able to take the existing code base. It was able to take the PDF and the write-up of what it's supposed to do and just churn out implementation of the class add language. So this is very too small to read, but this is over the course of 7 days, the amount of code generated. So basically, given the project at one large shot, it was able to produce a working class add implementation. And I like to say a class add implementation because one challenge then becomes, is it the same as the class add implementation? Great thing, I have a language, I've tested the language, I've got unit tests. Does it overlap with the one in Condor whatsoever? And so we took in a second piece of knowledge, and that's what this second spike was. It was that, you know what? We have an oracle. We can take the C++ library, not only read the code, but given a class add, the C++ library can actually tell us, well, is this right or is this wrong? And every time that the agent goes off and produces a bunch of code, which might be good, it might be slop, it might be somewhere in between, we can then point it at the reference Condor implementation and tell it right and wrong. And it turns out that was, for us, one of the secrets to actually closing out the particular loop. So it's not only feeding the knowledge, not only waiting enough time for the agents to get good enough, but being able to give it a oracle so it can test, see if it got it right, and if not, repeat, and then run somewhat autonomously. So kind of at the end of week one here, we had a working interoperable class add implementation. We even pointed at some web docs so it could find some functions that it missed. It could do, as far as we could come up with clever tests, anything that the Condor class add implementation reference in C++ could do. So why stop there? We were having fun. This was back when GitHub just had a single month, all you can eat. So let's go back to the buffet and eat some more. So class adds is well documented. It's got a great write-up, and not everything in Condor is like that. So we said, what about the protocol that the Condor daemons talk? It's not documented. Nobody else has an implementation of it. It's binary. It was kind of designed evolutionary, maybe in a different era, and the rest of the planet has gone different directions with how they designed protocols. Can we actually come up with an implementation for Go of the Condor protocol? So that's what we call Cedar. And then actually the APIs built on top of that protocol. So there's never been a second implementation. I would love actually if somebody could prove me wrong and find something up, but let's see if we can do this with agentic AI. And sure enough, again, it's probably good that this was still during the all-you-can-eat days of GitHub, but that's what 120,000 lines of code later, about two or so weeks later, the agent was able to take almost every single Condor API that the client can talk to the server from and produce a Go version. Now, I'm going to give you an unfair comparison, but the point of the comparison is not to be fair, but to kind of make you think about where could this thing take us. So 2023, we decided we are going to rewrite from scratch our Python bindings because Python bindings depended on a library that was going to go away. And from February 2023, we showed a preview version of this here in 2024. And in terms of making it into a stable series, October 2024 was when we delivered the rewritten version of the Python bindings. So I looked through our ticketing system. We logged 500 developer hours. And then actually the last ticket I could find when things were definitely complete was July 2025. So to get things into production, which is a very different state than all the test work, don't forget, there's a lot between all the test work and in production. So again, maybe not a fair comparison. That took, what was that, 18 months versus a couple weeks. So, one message I want to leave here is not that things were slow and things are now fast, but you have some of the opportunities to scratch itches, to go places, to take on projects you may have thought were too daunting because you looked at that and said, hey, if I look under that rock, that's 1,000 man-hour project under there. And so don't even go down that route. So we kept on going up the tech stack. So we started with class ads. We did the Cedar protocol. There's a configuration language that we have. There's the API above the Cedar protocol. Submit files are actually based on top of the config language. What are we going to do with all this? You know, it's all fine to do this academically. So what? So I personally assume that if a library exists out on GitHub, but it has no use cases, it's at best an academic exercise, but it is most definitely broken and non-functional. All things need a user. So I decided, let's start playing with interfaces and think about how people interact. Go is a great language for REST interfaces, you know, communicating over HTTP. Let's try building out a RESTful interface that can do all the things you can do with Condor command line clients on top of the new libraries. So that was the first small project I did with this. So you can actually, we have a Condor API server, a user, say we have, again, beautiful Python bindings. So let's say this user is using Rust or they're writing in R and they don't want to use Python. They can invoke through the API server and using the RESTful API, kind of anything that you could do with the AP with your normal command line. So this can be submitting jobs, it can be staging data, it can be invoking Condor SSH to job, it can be advertising things to the collector. Most of these APIs are a little more oriented toward job management, but the goal was, again, having all the API coverage. And this can be run separately for one of our services. We have this pod in Kubernetes, or this can be run under the same shared port that the rest of the Condor daemons run. You know, we have the open API spec. You know, this screenshot, if you look at a lot of these, probably looks familiar in terms of the jobs. But again, the goal was to do at least a little bit of everything. And actually, for me, the real fun one was making sure SSH job worked over the WebSocket as well. REST APIs make for a horrendously boring example on PowerPoint slides. Here's a bit of JSON and curl command line, and here's a bit of JSON that comes back. So let's go to a more interesting interface. REST is an interface to services. If you look in terms of popularity, MCP is another interface particularly meant for LLMs out to for services. So we said we did this with REST. Can we do this second interface? And there's some eccentricities with this, but particularly it has a very standard way of authenticating. MCP by definition must use OAuth for authentication. So it turns out we can take this exact same API server and also add OAuth onto it and provide a MCP. At that point, then you now start having fun screenshots. You can start talking, doing all these demos about saying, "Dear ChatGPT, submit my job. What's happening at the AP? Please remove all of Ron's jobs. I don't like Ron. He needs to go away." And these make for great dinner party tricks, right? This looks really cool. Maybe I'm just easily impressed, but I still kind of am tickled every time I can talk to a robot and it can go off and do things for my job. So you can use this in VS Code anywhere you lovingly go off to in a dark corner and talk to your agents. What are other interfaces that we use? Well, occasionally we have interfaces that humans look at. So I know God created the command line about 50 or 60 years ago and has never perfected it beyond that. But every so often people darken our corners or darken our doors and say, can we have a REST interface? So I decided, or web interface. So I decided, hey, if I'm going to do a cool demo of that REST API, what better way to do it than show an actual web interface and people can click on things and see it go. So we have added onto the project a small web UI that can go off and demo various things that you may have not thought of or may not seen before, integrate with Condor. So you remember I mentioned that we had Condor SSH to job hooked up through the REST API. Well, that means that it becomes fairly trivial to do the rest of the plumbing so you can have your SSH terminal in your browser. No more downloading PuTTY or teaching users where to find that funny looking black box in their operating system. They can just open up a terminal, or sorry, open up a browser, say I want a terminal with 10 gigabytes, 5 GPUs, and 300 petabytes of storage, whatever might match in your cluster. And Condor can schedule a job and start an interactive job all the way through your browser. We played a lot with other ways you can submit jobs. What's the right way to, I really hate interfaces that allow you to submit one job. I'm interested in interfaces that allow you to submit workflows or a whole list of jobs, and been thinking about how do you make those things interact? How do you get users to think lots of jobs and not just click, 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 go one job? We've been playing with that as well in terms of, do you provide them with a table that they can upload, a CSV, allow them to say, submit one of these jobs for each each file in this particular directory? Again, there's lots of user interfaces I think intellectually are a lot of fun to play with, of how do you present to a new person, this is how you can interact with Condor. It has some of the things that you might expect. There's a big table of all the jobs that exist. You can click remove, delete, all those sorts of things. And the other thing I had a lot of fun playing with on this web UI, things along the lines of how do you present lots of dense information? So Condor Q-Analyze is one of the best things since sliced bread. It helps you understand, why is my job not running? However, it prints out about 200 to 300 lines of stuff, it feels like. And it tells you all the information you need, but trying to find the information and quickly isolate what the problem was is tough in a CLI. However, with the web interface, I've been playing with different ways to present what's gone wrong, why is my job not running, much more densely. You can use colors, you can use visualizations, you can pull in more styles than just the command line. Now, one thing that, as we were making the UI more useful, we kept finding that the more features we added, because we wanted to say, well, a power user could do this, a power user could do that, and all of a sudden you end up with a mess because, Todd, how many flags do we have in Condor Submit?
I don't know. All of them.
All of a sudden, your web interface looks just like Condor Submit, and you have 50 million things that you can do with it, but no one can understand how to use it. So we started combining the two ideas between the REST interface and MCP, and it's actually fairly approachable to embed one of these agents within the web interface and actually have the agent help you fill out and fill in the form and navigate things that are increasingly complex. So that was another enjoyable little part of the project, is how do you combine these different modalities of presenting information to users. So it's requisite in CHTC to tell people about things that go wrong when you use new tools. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And my favorite part for this, for the LLM ecosystem so far, has been, Tim Tyson, I hope you don't mind, I screenshotted your help message on Slack. We woke up, I think this was on Monday at 7 a.m. to fire, fire, fire. The AP is crash looping. Everything is burning down. Nothing is working. All the jobs have died. What happened? Some huge traceback is all we get. And it turns out a user, beloved, that will remain anonymous, had their jobs not working, and they asked Claude, my job's not working. What do I do next? And Claude said, you know what you should do? Edit the job, so instead of running on the cluster, it runs on the AP, because that's going to make it so it's easier to debug. It'll start running right away. It'll be wonderful. And it turns out nobody has ever written a test in the Condor code base of what happens if somebody tries to edit a job so it runs on the AP. And it turns out if you do this for only one job out of 50 in a list, it will trigger a seg fault and die. So the bad news here is users will start doing strange things. They'll start touching parts of the software that no normal or definitely no beginner user would have ever tried before. And by the time people are expert users, they know enough that that's a silly thing to do. Why would you do that in the first place? So I think Christina was saying the other day that this can be a bit of an accelerant. You know, people can do things beyond their expertise, beyond their ability, and much faster than they were before. And I'd say for at least for me, one of the things, it's wonderful that we can make some of this more accessible to users, but the real message is you can't delegate responsibility. You can't say, the LLM is here, I'm no longer responsible for what I do, I don't have to think anymore. You, the human behind the keyboard, are still responsible for what your LLM does. So I think I will stop there. I will say that this is all, particularly the LLM part, a lot of fun. And we're about a year into the agentic era. There's all sorts of cool things that we've not been able to do before that magically we could start to do. And what I challenge folks to think about is what's the distance between all these neat party tricks and doing science? And do we close this in the next year? Or is it going to be like the self-driving car I was promised and still way beyond my afford or what I can afford? Thanks. Any questions? Yeah, I see Doug behind you there, Todd.
So any thoughts on how to protect against the not malicious, but in it, you know, the use case you just showed where someone talks to Claude and Claude gets a brilliant idea and causes havoc for the site admin?
Yeah. Part of this is, again, that getting that user education that you can't delegate out responsibility for what you do. Some of this is, okay, maybe we've been putting off some of these protections for too long and we should take some of the things off the deferred. We'll get to that later pile and get to them sooner. That changed some priorities. There are some maybe interesting tools in terms of how can we provide instructions to the agent so it works better. But even that, that seems like an obvious, easy win, but that's generated a lot of discussions internally of, does that just lead to the problem of overconfidence, right? If we say, oh, here's a skill file, so your agent is going to use the AP correctly, does that lead back to the user saying, oh, great. What I heard was use this skill file, and then you can do anything you want, run it all in YOLO mode and say yes to everything. So we've really struggled where, particularly on how should we invest, how should we communicate, and how do we help the users with maybe with more technical tools, skill files, MCPs, but not get them to be under the impression that there are these now impermeable guardrails and they can do whatever they want.
I'm actually going to be talking about that on Friday.
Yeah.
Sounds like Brian has summarized my talk already. So now I just have to make the talk match Brian's summary, which perfect because I haven't started them yet.
Yeah. Ian, you have like, 36 hours to come up with a better punchline. Actually, Jordan, well, Frank has made some comments before.
I have a lot of questions. We can also talk later about the other ones. I want to maybe ask about, here's the beginning of the slide where you show the ID token work. So two very related tangents here. So one is ID token can have additional claims or additional information like identify that the user's part of, say, the Atlas experiment, the CMS. Does that information get passed into the Condor job or tagged with the Condor job?
Yeah, unfortunately, one challenge with this slide is ID token is the name of the internal format for the capabilities we use within Condor. So this is not, the same terminology is also used for OAuth. So if you're thinking of an OAuth ID token, this is actually a slightly different thing. However, there is, if you say are starting with a ID token in the OAuth sense that has subject or group information, there is a way to get it to reflect in here as well. So it gets a little more technical, but I can tell you how that can be done.
Yeah, this is like an accounting thing. So like if you want to have special allocated queues, and if there's a way to do that, but also keep track of that through classes at the end of the day,
Yep.
that's great.
Yeah, that can all be done. It's just the point of the slide was a slightly different piece of technology.
Okay, so MCPs use the same token as well. If you have a Condor MCP, you can use the same token.
Yes, so the MCP will use OAuth for the agent to talk to it, say from VS Code or Claude, and that's where it gets more about the identity. Then it generates a token. Again, apologize for using the same word twice, but it'll use the token to talk to Condor. The current implementation doesn't necessarily pass down group information, but I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the idea of user education as a way to try and address this. Before this bug happened, we had no idea that that was a bug.
Right.
That wasn't on our radar. We could not have educated the user that that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So I think that gets to the idea of guardrails. And, you know, if there's something you don't want an agent to do on the system, then you may need to make it so that the user can't do that on the system either. And that goes into addressing the same UX concerns that a user might find. Might be unlikely for a user to find, but an agent's more likely to find it.
Yeah, I like this example. We have a couple examples where, you know, the agent advised the user to type sudo and install the software, and clearly the user should have been using their you know, there were some examples where it was clearly somebody wasn't thinking or had delegated that responsibility. I thought this was an interesting example. We didn't know about bug. They didn't know about that bug. It's the agent had suggested them to do something that no human would have suggested to do it, which I thought made it a great example.
So I'm wondering that doesn't this maybe point towards a new class of users for the facilitation team to educate? Basically, you get to now educate agents.
The only thing I would nitpick in that sentence is new, because the users have been doing this for 9 months now. We can't call it all that new anymore. In fact, one of the more eye-opening ones, you know, we discussed. You guys think users are using agents on our nodes? You know, yes, no, maybe. And then at one point, the sysadmin typed PS and grepped to see what was running, and we had 200 agents running on the AP. So yeah, we have new modalities, new education. It just may not be quite as new as we think it is. It might be.
I see. So
half a year old.
so you'll have to provide an agent that you've trained in order to avoid agents being used that you haven't trained.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's a fun new world. All right, thank you.